Welcome to the Stable Block. I'm Ellie, and I make games about horses from a 1970s communist block apartment. This time on the block, I'm talking about how I broke my horse game and how I'm fixing it. It all comes down to advertising. Let's have story time while some footage of me working on recent game features runs. Several years ago, I had a business that was economically thriving. Now the game's income sucks. Things are bad enough that we're having to cut features to reduce server costs and had to move to a lower cost of living country. And it's completely my fault. That's just the reality of it. Most of the factors were not under my control, but when you're the head of a business, all the responsibility falls on you. It's kind of just how it is. Let's talk about what happened to me to get the game to this state. The game was at its earning peak around 2018. At that time, I was really putting in the effort to take care of my mental and physical health. Plus, I was investing in my business knowledge. I was making the right moves to help the game grow. I had a game people loved, so it wasn't about adding features. It all came down to successfully advertising the game so more people could find it. And then mid-2018 rolled around. At that time, there was a bunch of life events happening. Frankly, way too many. My worst mistake was taking on a side job that was not a good fit. The stress from everything going on completely crashed my health and started me on a many years long journey for diagnosis and treatment. Health was a major factor. It's hard to work when you're on bed rest and in and out of the hospital. But the bigger issue was that I wasn't mentally performing where I needed to be. I was in survival mode, and the things I chose to work on for the game were survival mode choices. I was adding things like genes that have short-term payoffs and not working on things like advertising, which makes a much bigger difference in the game's health. That's fine if you're talking about an illness that lasts months, but I was sick for years. No business is going to do well on survival mode for years. Let's be clear, I'm not beating myself up over this. I made the wrong choices because they were the easier choices, and I only had the bandwidth for easy choices at the time. Besides, we were coasting by okay. I just didn't realize how much I was setting myself up for failure in the future. During the time I was sick, paid advertising, which I've always heavily relied on, went through a systemic collapse. A lot of legislation was passed that changed how advertising worked. The market became supersaturated, and a number of corporations figured out that they could just keep hiking prices, and small businesses just had to eat the cost. So not only were paid ads no longer nearly as effective, they cost way more on top of it. Between advertising falling apart and me being too sick to respond to it, our registration numbers crumbled. In the gaming world, it's grow or die, and we were definitely not growing. Thankfully, I have a number of amazing members that got us through this period. We would not have made it without them because there's a third factor, which is a huge elephant in the room. Prices around the world have increased so much over the past 7 years, and wages are not rising to meet them. Let's be clear, the people who rode that out and are still supporting us are amazing, and I'm personally incredibly grateful to them. I cannot thank you enough if you stuck with me while I was sick during this period. Thankfully, after many years, I have a diagnosis now. I had multiple strokes when pregnant that my doctors in the US didn't catch. And I have a renal electrolyte wasting disorder. Thankfully, what's done is done with the strokes. And since I don't want to have any more babies, I don't have to worry about that. The electrolyte wasting disorder, though, is a real pain in the ass. But every year I get more experience managing it, and it becomes less and less of a disability. Because I have a unique familial mutation of a very rare disorder, I don't have a single doctor on my team with experience with my condition. It's been really complicated figuring out what works for me, but I'm getting there, and I'm healthier now than I've been in a really long time. So great news, the health stuff is under control now. I can't do anything about the US economy, sorry, but I can do something about the advertising. Paid advertising is still a dumpster fire, but I don't have to use paid advertising, which is good because I'm way too poor to spend a bunch of money on ads anyways. YouTube is my plan to fix the game that I broke. And while a lot of it wasn't my fault, it's still my responsibility. So I'm going to be putting that energy that I should have spent on advertising all those years ago and put it into video creation. It's one of the only ways these days for small businesses to let people know they even exist in an increasingly noisy web. I have some footage of stuff going on around the apartment and more info about what projects we're working on for the game, but I kind of feel like this stands on its own. So thanks for having story time with me, and we'll catch up on the rest next time. See you then.